You left me hanging. Up next, we have Adam Lefkowitz. Sorry, my mic was off. Adam Lefkowitz. There we go. All right. Give me a second here. And I'll try to make sure the cursor is not in the middle of your presentation like it has been for the past 3. I got one job here. All right, you ready?
Yep.
All right.
Is the microphone on? Yep.
It is.
All right, everybody. My name is Adam. I'm from VictorOps, and this is already my 5th DevOps Days this year. And one of the themes that typically comes up at DevOps Days is around automation. So I thought it would be fun to talk about how our brains use automation. So I'd like to walk you through an exercise to start off with. Let's take James. That's not this James, different James. He's very shy, he's helpful, he has got little interest in people, he's meek, needs order and structure, and has a passion for details. So based on this information, is it more likely that James is a librarian or a farmer? So raise your hand if you think he's a librarian. All right, raise your hand if you think farmer. All right, it's kind of 50-50. Well, James is more likely to be a farmer because there's about 20 times more male farmers than there are male librarians. And even though the traits I listed more closely align to a librarian, helpful, passion for detail, statistically, he's more likely to be a farmer. And many of us use those traits as part of our decision making, and that error in judgment is part of cognitive bias, and we all fall prey to this. So cognitive bias is errors in thinking that affect our decisions and our judgments. And so I'll walk through a couple other examples, and while I do, think about when either yourself or other people that you know do some of these things. So let's start off with confirmation bias. This is when we seek out news feeds that only align with our own beliefs, or overconfidence bias. Have you ever met someone that claims that they're really good at singing, but then once you hear them, you find out that they don't have that much talent? Or the IKEA bias. And we all have peers that have built internal systems that aren't really that good, but to them it's the best thing ever, right? Or the halo effect. You probably are believing what I'm talking about right now simply because I'm on stage and I have a microphone, right? So there's a ton of these. I think they're up to about 175 different types, and they're really difficult to identify within yourself, but once you start to become aware of them, you can start to identify it in others. So we like to think that we're logical and objective, but why do we have these biases? Well, it all stems from the fact that our brains create shortcuts called heuristics to help automate simple tasks. So over time, our brains have adapted to automate simple things like sitting down, typing. Think about when you type in the command line. You don't have to think about every single keystroke, right? And this is because these tasks hit the fast part of our brain first, the part that is responsible for memory, reflex, and emotion, before it hits the slow part of our brain that deals with logic, it's analytical, and has problem solving. And this is because our brains simply can't process every single piece of information, nor can they think about every single outcome. So they have to create these shortcuts that are based on your experience and your personality. Now, mistakes start to happen when your brain automates more complex decisions. Let's say your girlfriend or boyfriend over the last couple of months asked you to marry them. What if you only use that fast part of your brain that's responsible for memory, reflex, and emotion? You may not make the right decision, right? So let's put this in context of our own roles. So many of us at our day jobs have to make decisions quickly, but we also have to problem solve in order to come to those decisions. And this is especially true when it comes to complex systems like modern infrastructure. So most of my experience here in DevOps is around incident management. So let's take the example of a service disruption. You have to respond quickly. Raise your hand if you're rational and objective in that situation, right? No. It's really hard because you have constraints. So on one hand, you have to make a quick, efficient decision, and you have to balance that with the need to analyze information from complex systems. So in those situations, take a step back and engage that slow part of your brain. So during a service disruption, collaborate. Work as a team. That's one of the best ways to deal with this because you can start to identify when other people are experiencing this. Other recommendations are have a facilitator during your postmortem retrospective. They can also identify when this is happening on the team. And have documentation in the form of runbooks, that helps give the person some context when they respond and, maybe some ideas on what, happened in the past when we saw a similar type of disruption. So our brains automate certain tasks to help us out. However, when it comes to complex activities like a service disruption, marriage proposal, or other aspects, slow down and just engage that slow part of your brain. Thank you.